The great crystal tower of Nexus Prime reached high into the purple sky. Inside its top floor, 47 different alien species sat around a massive circular table. This was the Galactic Council, the group that made decisions for billions of beings across the galaxy. Ambassador Kethvar stood up slowly. His blue skin shimmered under the bright lights as he opened his mouth to speak. The Xanthari always spoke first at these meetings. It was tradition. "We gather again to discuss the affairs of our galaxy," Kethvar said in his deep voice. "Today we must talk about the trade problems between the mollusk people and the insect hives. Also, there are border disputes in the outer spiral region." Around the table, other aliens nodded or made sounds of agreement. The mollusks waved their tentacles. The insectoids clicked their mandibles. The furry Vorthons growled softly. Each species had their own way of showing they understood. High Arbiter Zel Nara, a tall gray alien with large black eyes, watched everything carefully. She had been leading the council for many years. Her people, the Nexari, were known for being wise and fair. She noticed that something felt different today. For months now, strange things had been happening. Every time the council made an important decision, someone seemed to know about it before they announced it. Trade agreements that were supposed to be secret became public knowledge. Military plans that only council members knew about somehow reached the wrong ears. "There have been more leaked communications," said Director Voxhan, the head of council intelligence. He was a thin alien with 6 arms and 3 eyes. "Someone is listening to our private talks." The room filled with worried murmurs. The Xanthari ambassador slammed his fist on the table. "Impossible. Our security is the best in the galaxy." "That's what we thought," Voxhan replied. "But the evidence is clear. 3 times this month our classified decisions have been known by others before we made them public." High Arbiter Zelnara raised her hand for silence. "Have we found any proof of spying devices?" "No, High Arbiter. We have scanned this room with every type of technology we have. We found nothing. In the back of the room there was a small section for observers. This area was for representatives of minor species and diplomatic guests. Most of the time it was empty or had just 1 or 2 beings sitting there. Today a human sat quietly in the last row. Her name was Ambassador Sarah Chen. She was small compared to most of the aliens in the room. She had dark hair pulled back and wore a simple blue uniform. She took notes on a small tablet just like she had done for the past 3 years. The human had been coming to these meetings ever since her people were given observer status. Observer status meant they could watch but not vote or speak unless asked. Most council members had forgotten that humans even attended these sessions. Sarah Chen listened as the aliens discussed their security problems. Her face showed no emotion. She wrote things down and watched carefully, but she never interrupted or asked questions. The meeting continued with normal business. The council voted on new trade rules. They discussed sending aid to a planet that had suffered from earthquakes. They argued about mining rights in an asteroid field. Finally, they came to the most important topic of the day. The Cronin Empire had been causing trouble again. The Cronins were a warrior species that liked to fight and conquer other planets. They had been attacking council ships and taking over small colonies. "We must show strength," said the Xanthari ambassador. "The Cronins only understand force." The mollusk representative disagreed. "Violence creates more violence. We should try to talk to them first." The debate went on for an hour. Finally, High Arbiter Zelnara called for a vote. All in favor of imposing trade sanctions on the Cronin Empire? Most of the council voted yes. The sanctions would stop all trade with the Cronins until they stopped their attacks. It was a serious punishment that would hurt their economy. As the meeting ended, the various aliens began to leave. They talked in small groups as they walked toward the exits. The Xanthari discussed military strategies. The mollusks shared scientific theories. The insectoids planned new colony expansions. In the observer section, Sarah Chen closed her tablet and stood up slowly. She watched as the council members left the chamber. Her eyes followed each group carefully, as if she was memorizing who talked to whom. A few aliens nodded politely to her as they passed. Most ignored her completely. Humans were considered a very minor species in galactic politics. They controlled only 3 star systems and had a small population. They had no military power and limited technology compared to the great council races. Sarah Chen walked toward the exit, but she moved slowly. She seemed to be in no hurry to leave. As the chamber emptied, She took one last look around the great room. The massive table where important decisions were made, the advanced technology that protected their conversations, the symbols of 47 different civilizations. Then she smiled. It was a small smile, barely noticeable, but there was something about it that would have worried the council members if they had seen it. It was the smile of someone who knew a secret. She finally left the chamber and walked through the crystal corridors of the tower. Other aliens moved past her without paying attention. To them, she was just another observer from a minor species, someone who was allowed to watch but had no real importance. Sarah Chen took an elevator down to the diplomatic quarters. Her room was small and simple, nothing like the grand suites given to important council members. She had a bed, a desk, and a communication device. It looked like the room of someone with very little power or influence, but appearances could be misleading. Sarah Chen sat at her desk and activated a secure communication channel. The screen showed only static at first, then a voice spoke from hidden speakers. "Report," the voice said. "The council has voted for sanctions against the Cronins," Sarah Chen said quietly. "They also discussed the security leaks again. Foxhound suspects someone is monitoring their sessions, but they found no evidence." "Good. Any changes to their military positions?" "The Zenthari want to increase patrols in the border regions. The mollusks are worried about their research stations. The insectoids are planning 3 new colonies in the neutral zone." "Understood. Continue monitoring. The evaluation phase is almost complete." The communication ended. Sarah Chen turned off the device and looked out her small window at the stars. Somewhere out there, among those distant lights, were answers to questions the Galactic Council had not even thought to ask. For 3 years, she had sat in that observer section. For 3 years, she had watched and listened and learned. The Council thought they knew everything about the human species. They thought they understood humanity's place in the galaxy. They were wrong about many things. Sarah Chen prepared for sleep, knowing that tomorrow would bring another council session. Another day of watching aliens who believed they were in control of their own destiny. Another day of being underestimated by beings who had no idea what they were really dealing with. In the quiet of her room, she allowed herself another small smile. Soon the council would learn the truth about humanity. Soon they would understand that some watchers are more dangerous than those who are watched. The galaxy was about to change in ways the council could not imagine, and it would all begin with the quiet human who sat in the back row, taking notes and learning secrets that would shake the foundations of galactic civilization. Captain Thexvar was having the strangest day of his military career. He stood on the bridge of his Zenthari battleship, staring at a report that made no sense. "Sir, you need to see this," his communications officer said. "Our secret supply depot at Kepler Station has been restocked." "That's good news," Captain Thexvar replied. "When did the supply convoy arrive?" "That's the problem, sir. No convoy was scheduled. No ships were detected. But somehow our weapons depot now has better equipment than we stored there originally." Captain Thexvar frowned. The supply depot was classified. Only a few high-ranking officers knew its location. How could someone restock it without authorization? And why would they use better equipment than what was there before? 3 systems away, Dr. Velnara was experiencing her own mystery. She worked at a mollusk research station, studying dangerous quantum reactions. For months, her team had struggled with complex calculations that seemed impossible to solve. Then one morning, she found anonymous data packets in their computer system. The files contained elegant solutions to every problem they had been working on. The mathematics was perfect, but the approach was unlike anything in mollusk scientific literature. "Where did this come from?" she asked her assistant. "We don't know, Doctor. The files just appeared overnight. Our security systems show no breach. It's as if they materialized from nowhere." Similar incidents were happening across Council space. A group of pirates attacking a medical convoy suddenly found their weapons systems failing at the exact moment they prepared to fire. Their engines died, their communications went dark, but their life support remained perfect. When Council security forces arrived, they found the pirates alive but completely helpless. On the border worlds, colonies that had been struggling to survive received anonymous shipments of medicine and food. The supplies always arrived just when they were needed most. No one knew who sent them or how they got past Council customs. Director Voxhan sat in his office surrounded by reports of these strange events. His 3 eyes scanned document after document looking for patterns. As the head of Council Intelligence, he had seen many mysteries in his career. But this was different. Every incident has the same characteristics, he told his assistant. Someone with advanced technology is helping Council interests. But they never reveal themselves, never ask for payment, never make demands. Could it be one of the major species acting in secret? His assistant asked. No, I've investigated all of them. The Xanthari are too proud to hide their good deeds. The mollusks would want to study any new technology they discovered. The insectoids would use such capabilities to expand their territories. This doesn't match any known species behavior. Voxhan activated his main computer and displayed a galactic map. Red dots marked every mysterious incident of the past 6 months. The pattern was random at first glance, but when he added other data, something interesting appeared. Blue dots marked every location where humans had requested cultural exchange visits or educational access in the past year. The correlation was impossible to ignore. Wherever humans had been present, beneficial anomalies followed within weeks. But that made no sense. Humans were one of the weakest species in the galaxy. They had primitive technology, a tiny population, and controlled only 3 minor star systems. How could they possibly have the resources for such widespread operations? Voxhan decided to test his theory. The next council session would discuss Project Aegis, a top-secret defensive plan against the expanding Void Wraiths. The Void Wraiths were dangerous energy beings that consumed entire star systems. If humans were really listening to classified council discussions, they would know about Project Aegis within days. The council meeting took place as scheduled. High Arbiter Zelnara presented the Aegis plan to the assembled representatives. It involved creating a network of defensive platforms around vulnerable systems. The technology was experimental, and the plan was highly classified. In the observer section, Sarah Chen took her usual seat. She listened quietly as the council discussed their fears about the Void Wraiths. The energy beings had destroyed 12 uninhabited systems already, and were moving toward populated areas. We must act quickly, said the Xanthari ambassador. The Wraiths show no sign of stopping. Our scientists believe the defensive platforms can create a barrier they cannot cross, added the mollusk representative. But we need time to build and deploy them. Sarah Chen made notes as usual, her expression calm and professional. To the council members, she looked like any other observer gathering information for her government's files. 3 days later, impossible things started happening again. A Void Wraith attack on the outer colony of Terminus 7 met unexpected resistance. The colonists, who had only basic defensive systems, somehow held off the energy beings using weapons that appeared overnight. When council investigators arrived, they found advanced shield generators that had not existed the day before. On Fortuna 9, ancient defensive platforms that had been offline for centuries suddenly activated. The platforms used technology that predated the current galactic civilization, but they worked perfectly against Void Wraith attacks. No one could explain how or why they had restarted. Most shocking of all, the Cronan Empire sent a diplomatic message to the council. The warrior species, who had been hostile for years, offered to provide military assistance against the Void Wraiths. They claimed to have received new information about the threat that made them reconsider their position. Voxhan gathered all this data and presented it to High Arbiter Zelnara in a private meeting. The correlation is undeniable, he said. Every time we discuss classified information with human observers present, the universe seems to respond in our favor. You're suggesting that a species with 3 star systems has secret agents throughout the galaxy? Zelnara asked. I'm suggesting that our assumptions about human capabilities may be completely wrong. Zelnara studied the reports carefully. The evidence was strange, but it was also strong. Too many coincidences could not be explained by chance. What do you recommend? She asked. I want to confront the human directly, but carefully. If they really have the power these incidents suggest, we need to be diplomatic. And if you're wrong? If this is all coincidence? Then we apologize to a minor species representative and continue searching for the real source of these mysteries. Zelnara approved the plan. The next council session would be different. They would install the most advanced surveillance technology available and watch the human observer more carefully than ever before. But as Voxhan left the meeting, he had a troubling thought. If humans really were responsible for these beneficial interventions, What did that say about their true capabilities? And if they had such power, why were they hiding it? The questions kept him awake that night. Somewhere in the galaxy, forces were moving that the Council did not understand. Ancient defensive systems were awakening. Enemy species were changing their minds about cooperation. Mysterious supplies were appearing exactly where they were needed. Either the galaxy was experiencing the strangest series of coincidences in history, or humanity was far more dangerous than anyone realized. Voxhan suspected the truth was the latter. Soon, the Council would demand answers from their quiet observer. Soon, Sarah Chen would have to explain how a minor species seemed to know everything and influence everything while claiming to control almost nothing. The game of secrets was about to end, and Voxhan was not sure the galaxy was ready for what they might discover. The Council chamber had never been more heavily monitored. Hidden sensors covered every surface. Advanced scanning equipment watched for the smallest energy signature. Director Voxhan had installed surveillance technology that could detect a whisper from across the room. High Arbiter Zelnara called the emergency session to order. The representatives looked nervous as they took their seats. Reports of impossible events had reached every corner of Council space. "We face a crisis of understanding," Zelnara announced. "Someone or something is operating in our territory with capabilities beyond our knowledge. They appear to be helping us, but their methods remain a mystery." In the observer section, Sarah Chen sat in her usual place. She looked exactly the same as always. Simple blue uniform, dark hair pulled back, small tablet for taking notes. Nothing about her suggested she was anything more than a minor diplomatic observer, but today every sensor in the room was focused on her. Director Voxhan stood to address the Council. "The evidence shows a clear pattern. Wherever we discuss classified information, beneficial events follow. Ancient defense systems activate. Enemy species change their minds about cooperation. Our problems solve themselves in ways that seem impossible." The Zenthari ambassador slammed his fist on the table. "Are you suggesting we have a spy among us?" "I'm suggesting we have someone with capabilities we don't understand," Voxhan replied. The mollusk scientist waved her tentacles excitedly. "The mathematics alone would require computational power beyond anything we possess. The coordination needed for these interventions spans the entire galaxy." "But who could have such resources?" asked the insectoid representative. "Only the major Council species have that kind of reach." Voxhan activated a holographic display. It showed the correlation between human requests for access and subsequent mysterious events. The pattern was impossible to ignore. "The data points to one conclusion," he said. "The human observer program coincides perfectly with these incidents." All eyes turned to Sarah Chen. She continued taking notes as if nothing unusual was happening. Her calm expression never changed. "That's ridiculous," said the Vorthan delegate. "Humans are barely spacefaring. They have 3 minor systems and primitive technology." "Do they?" Voxhan asked. "How do we know? We've never investigated their claims about their capabilities. We accepted their request for observer status without question." High Arbiter Zelnara studied the human carefully. Sarah Chen looked up from her tablet and met the High Arbiter's gaze directly. There was no fear in her eyes, no surprise at being the center of attention. "Ambassador Chen," Zelnara said formally, "these allegations concern your species. Do you have any response?" Sarah Chen closed her tablet slowly and stood up. "I request permission to address the full Council." A murmur ran through the chamber. Observer species rarely spoke at Council sessions. They certainly never requested formal speaking time. "Permission granted," Zelnara replied. Sarah Chen walked down from the observer section to the main floor. Her footsteps echoed in the suddenly quiet chamber. When she reached the center of the room, she turned to face the assembled representatives. "High Arbiter, distinguished Council members," she began. "For 3 years I have sat in the back of this chamber and listened to your debates. I have watched you make decisions that affect billions of beings across the galaxy." Her voice was calm and clear. She showed no nervousness at addressing species that could destroy her homeworld with a single vote. "During that time, my government has been conducting an evaluation. We needed to determine whether the galactic community was ready for certain truths about humanity's place in the galaxy." The chamber erupted in confused voices. "Evaluation? What kind of evaluation?" Sarah Chen waited for silence before continuing. "You have assumed many things about my species. You believe we are new to space travel because we revealed only 3 star systems. You think we have primitive technology because we showed you only basic capabilities. You consider us a minor species because we asked for observer status instead of demanding full membership. Director Voxhan leaned forward in his seat. Are you saying those assumptions are incorrect? I'm saying you never asked the right questions, Sarah Chen replied. When we requested observer status, you assumed we wanted to learn from you. You never considered that we might be here to learn about you. The implications of her words slowly sank in. The Zenthari ambassador spoke first. You're claiming your people have been studying us? For over a century, Sarah Chen confirmed. Initially through automated probes that you never detected. Later through infiltration methods that your security systems cannot recognize. Your discovery of humanity 3 years ago was not first contact. It was our decision to reveal ourselves. The chamber fell deadly silent. High Arbiter Zelnara felt her blood turn cold. If that's true, she said slowly, then everything we thought we knew about your species is wrong. Not wrong, Sarah Chen corrected. Incomplete. You saw what we chose to show you. Foxhand stood up abruptly. The beneficial interventions. The impossible coincidences. That was your people? Some of it. We have been. Preventing certain unfortunate outcomes while you decided whether you could govern yourselves responsibly. The mollusk scientist made a sound of amazement. The quantum calculations that appeared at our research station. The elegant mathematics. That was human science. Our computers analyzed your problem and provided a solution. We were concerned that your experiments might cause a cascade reaction. The defensive systems that activated against the void wraiths? Asked the insectoid representative. Ancient platforms that we have been maintaining in secret. We reactivated them when the threat became serious. Each answer raised more terrifying questions. If humans had this kind of technological capability, what else were they hiding? If they had been watching for over a century, what did they know about Council activities? High Arbiter Zelnara struggled to maintain her composure. What is the true extent of human civilization? Sarah Chen smiled for the first time since entering the chamber. It was not a pleasant expression. High Arbiter, you have asked the most important question. The answer will determine the future relationship between humanity and the Galactic Council. She activated a device on her wrist. Suddenly, the chamber's main display screen came to life. It showed a map of the galaxy, but not the one the Council was familiar with. This map showed hundreds of star systems marked with human symbols. Not 3 systems as they had claimed, but 300, maybe more. This is the true extent of human space, Sarah Chen announced. We have colonies, research stations, and observation posts throughout Council territory and far beyond. What you thought was a minor species taking its first steps into the galaxy is actually a civilization that has been deliberately concealing its expansion for over 2 centuries. The revelation hit the Council like a physical blow. The Zenthari ambassador stood up so fast his chair fell over. The mollusk scientist made sounds of distress. The insectoid representative's mandibles clicked rapidly in agitation. Impossible, Voxhan whispered. Our sensors would have detected such expansion. Your sensors detect what we allow them to detect, Sarah Chen replied. Human stealth technology has been centuries ahead of Council capabilities since before your species achieved interstellar flight. The full scope of the deception was becoming clear. Humanity had not just hidden their true size and capabilities. They had been secretly influencing galactic politics for generations while pretending to be powerless observers. Why? High Arbiter Zelnara asked. Why maintain this deception? Why not reveal your true power? Sarah Chen's expression became serious again. Because power without wisdom is dangerous. We needed to evaluate whether galactic civilization was mature enough to handle the truth about our presence. And what was your conclusion? Zelnara asked, though she was not sure she wanted to hear the answer. The evaluation is not yet complete, Sarah Chen replied. That decision will be made based on how you respond to learning the truth today. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity had not been seeking permission to join galactic civilization. They had been deciding whether that civilization deserved to continue existing under their secret protection. The Council faced a choice they had never imagined having to make. How do you negotiate with a species that has been controlling your destiny without you even knowing it? The quiet human observer had just revealed that she represented the most powerful force in the galaxy, and now the fate of every Council species might depend on proving they were worthy of humanity's continued benevolence. Sarah Chen stood in the center of the council chamber as shocked silence filled the air. The holographic display still showed the true map of human space. Hundreds of star systems instead of the 3 they had claimed. But she was not finished with her revelations. "I understand this is difficult to accept," she said calmly. "Allow me to provide more context." She activated another control on her device. The galactic map changed, now showing historical data going back 100 years. Red markers appeared at various locations, each marking significant events in galactic history. "The plague of Proxima 87 years ago," Sarah Chen began. "Your medical records show it mysteriously stopped spreading just before reaching the core worlds. You attributed this to natural immunity developing in the population." A new image appeared. Microscopic data showing viral structures. The plague did not develop natural immunity. Human medical teams introduced a carefully designed counter-virus that eliminated the disease without leaving traces. "We prevented the deaths of approximately 12 billion beings across 43 worlds." The mollusk scientist made a sound of recognition. "The viral structure that appeared in our later analysis. We thought it was a natural mutation. It was human intervention," Sarah Chen confirmed. "But we could not reveal ourselves at the time, so we made it appear natural." The map shifted again, showing another historical marker. "The Stellar Cascade Incident, 62 years ago. Your records show that the chain reaction between 3 stars somehow stopped on its own." High Arbiter Zelnara remembered reading about this event in her history lessons. An experimental energy mining operation had triggered a cascade that threatened to destroy 12 star systems. Then suddenly the reaction had stabilized. "That was also your people?" she asked. "Human engineering teams worked for 8 months to contain the cascade. We had to develop entirely new technologies to stop the chain reaction. The official report credited unforeseen quantum fluctuations for the stabilization." Director Voxhan was rapidly connecting dots in his mind. The Great Trade War that ended 41 years ago. Both sides suddenly discovered ancient documents that proved their original treaty had been misinterpreted. "Those documents were not ancient," Sarah Chen confirmed. "They were created by human legal experts who studied your conflict for 6 months. We fabricated historical evidence to provide both sides with a face-saving way to end the war." The revelations kept coming. Every major crisis that had resolved itself mysteriously over the past century had human fingerprints on it. The council chamber filled with the sounds of distressed aliens as they realized the scope of humanity's secret involvement in their history. The Zenthari ambassador was the first to find his voice. "You have been manipulating galactic civilization for generations." "We have been preventing galactic disasters," Sarah Chen corrected. "There is a difference. But you made decisions for us without our knowledge or consent." Sarah Chen's expression remained calm. "Yes, because your species' track record of decision-making suggested that major crises would result in the deaths of billions if left to natural resolution." She activated another display, showing statistical projections. Human analysis indicates that without intervention, the plague of Proxima would have killed 60% of all galactic population. The stellar cascade would have eliminated 12 star systems and displaced over 800 billion beings. The Great Trade War was escalating toward a conflict that would have involved 17 species and lasted decades. The numbers were staggering. If humanity was telling the truth, they had prevented catastrophes on an unimaginable scale. But the insectoid representative was not satisfied. "How do we know your projections were accurate? How do we know these disasters would have happened without your interference?" "You don't," Sarah Chen admitted. "But we do. Human predictive modeling is several generations ahead of anything your species have developed. Our probability calculations have been proven accurate over centuries of testing." Director Voxhan stood up slowly. "The security leaks we detected. The way our classified decisions seem to be known before we announce them. You have been monitoring all our communications for years." "For decades," Sarah Chen confirmed. "We have listening devices throughout this building and similar facilities on every council world. Your security technology cannot detect our surveillance methods. That's a violation of our sovereignty." "Yes, it is. But it was necessary for the safety of galactic civilization." High Arbiter Zelnara tried to process the full implications. "Every major decision we have made in the past century. You knew about all of them in advance. We knew about them as you were making them. Our analysis helped us determine which outcomes were acceptable and which required intervention. The mollusk scientist waved her tentacles in agitation. The research data that has been appearing in our computer systems. The solutions to problems we could not solve. That was all from human sources. Your research often approaches dangerous territories. We provide guidance to prevent accidents that could harm your populations. But you never asked permission. You never even told us you were helping. Sarah Chen's voice became slightly colder. Would you have accepted help from a species you considered primitive and powerless? Would you have listened to warnings from beings you thought were your inferiors? The question hung in the air. The council members looked at each other uncomfortably. The truth was that they probably would not have accepted human advice, especially not from a species they believed to be technologically backward. The pirate attacks that have been failing mysteriously, the Vorthon delegate said. Your people have been disabling criminal ships. Human security forces monitor all major shipping lanes. We intervene when criminals threaten civilian vessels, but we make it appear to be equipment failures to avoid revealing our presence. And the supply depots that have been restocked with better equipment? We upgrade your military supplies when we determine that your current equipment is insufficient for the threats you face. Each answer revealed another layer of human involvement in galactic affairs. They had been secretly governing civilization for generations, making decisions that affected trillions of beings without anyone knowing they existed. Director Voxhan realized the true scope of what they were facing. You haven't just been hiding your civilization from us. You have been running our civilization for us. Managing certain aspects of it, Sarah Chen corrected. We allowed you to maintain the illusion of independence while preventing the worst possible outcomes of your decisions. The Zenthari ambassador stood up angrily. You had no right. We are free beings. We have the right to make our own choices and face our own consequences. Even when those consequences include the extinction of multiple species. Even then. Freedom means accepting responsibility for our mistakes. Sarah Chen nodded slowly. That argument has been made many times in human political circles. It is one of the reasons we decided to conduct this evaluation. High Arbiter Zelnara felt a chill run through her body. Evaluation? For the past 3 years I have not been observing your political processes to learn about galactic governance. I have been documenting whether your species have developed enough wisdom to govern yourselves without human supervision. The chamber erupted in shocked voices. The evaluation had not been about whether humans were ready to join galactic civilization. It had been about whether galactic civilization was ready to survive without human protection. What happens if we fail your test? Zelnara asked quietly. Sarah Chen looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of representatives from dozens of species. There are 3 options currently being debated in human political circles. Direct integration, where we reveal ourselves fully and take active leadership roles in galactic governance. Complete withdrawal, where we disappear entirely and allow you to face the natural consequences of your decisions without interference. Or selective guidance, where we continue as we have been, but with your knowledge and consent. And if we refuse all 3 options? Sarah Chen's expression became completely emotionless. Then humanity will make whatever decision we believe is best for the long-term survival of galactic civilization. The threat was politely stated but perfectly clear. Humanity would decide the galaxy's future whether the Council agreed or not. The only question was whether other species would have any input into that decision. For the first time in galactic history, the Galactic Council faced a choice where they were not the ones with power. They were being evaluated by their secret guardians, and their entire civilization hung in the balance. The council chamber had never been so quiet. 47 species sat in stunned silence as they processed what Sarah Chen had revealed. Their entire understanding of galactic politics had been shattered in a single afternoon. High Arbiter Zelnara was the first to speak. Ambassador Chen, you mentioned that this evaluation has been ongoing for 3 years. What exactly have you been measuring? Sarah Chen clasped her hands behind her back and looked around the chamber. Human social scientists developed a complex matrix for evaluating civilization maturity. We measure wisdom, compassion, long-term thinking, cooperation between different groups, and the ability to put collective welfare above individual gain. She activated her device again. The holographic display showed graphs and charts that tracked various metrics over the past 3 years. Every council session has been analyzed, every debate recorded and studied, Every vote examined for its underlying motivations. We have been documenting whether galactic civilization shows signs of growing beyond its historical limitations. The Xanthari ambassador leaned forward aggressively. And what did you conclude about us? The results are mixed, Sarah Chen replied honestly. There have been moments of genuine progress. The unanimous vote to provide aid during the Helix Nebula disaster showed that you can put humanitarian concerns above political differences. The peaceful resolution of the mining rights conflict demonstrated improved diplomatic skills. Your recent cooperation against the Void Wraith threat indicates you can work together when facing existential dangers. But, Director Voxhan prompted, sensing there was more. But you still show many of the same patterns that have characterized galactic politics for centuries. Tribal thinking where each species prioritizes its own interests. Short-term solutions that create long-term problems. Competition for resources instead of cooperation to develop new ones. Decisions based on emotion rather than logical analysis. The chamber filled with uncomfortable murmurs. The accusations stung because they contained elements of truth. The mollusk scientist spoke up. You judge us by human standards, but we are different species with different ways of thinking. What seems logical to you might not work for us. That argument might be valid if your current methods were producing good results, Sarah Chen replied. But human analysis shows that without intervention, galactic civilization is on track for several major crises within the next 50 years. Population pressure leading to resource wars, technological advancement outpacing wisdom, resulting in catastrophic accidents, political divisions growing until cooperation becomes impossible. She paused to let the implications sink in. The question is not whether you think differently than humans. The question is whether you can learn to think in ways that will keep your civilization alive. High Arbiter Zelnara felt the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. What would human direct involvement look like? Humans would take leadership positions in the Council and other galactic institutions. Our technology and knowledge would be shared openly. Major decisions would be guided by human analysis and long-term planning. In exchange, we would guarantee peace, prosperity, and protection from external threats. That sounds like benevolent dictatorship, the Vorthon delegate observed. It is benevolent dictatorship, Sarah Chen agreed. Some human political philosophers argue that given the vast differences in technological and analytical capabilities, this is the most ethical option. The insectoid representative made clicking sounds of distress. And the withdrawal option? What would happen if humans simply disappeared? Sarah Chen's expression became grave. Complete withdrawal means exactly that. All human monitoring stops. All secret interventions end. All protective systems shut down. You would face the natural consequences of your decisions without any safety net. But we survived before humans became involved. Did you? Human intervention began over a century ago. You have no experience governing modern galactic civilization without our influence. Our analysis suggests that withdrawal would result in the collapse of current political structures within 20 years, followed by widespread conflict and possible extinction events. The brutal honesty of her assessment left the Council speechless. They were being told that their civilization might not be viable without human protection. Director Voxhan asked the question everyone was thinking. What about the third option? Selective guidance with our knowledge and consent? That option requires fundamental changes to how galactic governance works, Sarah Chen explained. Decisions would need to be based on long-term analysis rather than short-term politics. Resource allocation would prioritize collective welfare over individual species advantages. Conflicts would be resolved through mediation rather than power struggles. Most importantly, you would need to accept human oversight of major decisions. Oversight? The Xanthari ambassador demanded. You mean we would need human approval for our choices? You would need to demonstrate that your choices serve the long-term interests of galactic civilization. Humans would have veto power over decisions that our analysis indicates would cause significant harm. The implications were staggering. The Council would become subordinate to human judgment on major issues. Their sovereignty would exist only as long as they made decisions that humans approved. High Arbiter Zelnara struggled with the impossible choice they faced. How long do we have to decide? The human government is expecting my final evaluation report within 1 week, Sarah Chen replied. Based on that report and your response to these revelations, they will choose which option to implement. 1 week to decide the future of galactic civilization? You have had 3 years to demonstrate readiness for greater responsibility. The past few hours have been your final examination. The chamber erupted in panicked voices as representatives realized they were out of time. Some demanded immediate votes. Others called for emergency consultations with their home governments. A few suggested rejecting all human options and trying to maintain independence. Sarah Chen waited for the chaos to die down before speaking again. Before you make your choice, consider this. Human civilization underwent its own period of maturation. We face the same challenges you face now. Tribalism, short-term thinking, competition over cooperation. We nearly destroyed ourselves several times before we learned to think beyond our immediate interests. She looked around the chamber, making eye contact with representatives from multiple species. We are not asking you to become human. We are asking you to become mature. The 3 options I described are all pathways toward that maturity. The question is whether you will choose one voluntarily, or whether humanity will be forced to choose for you. High Arbiter Zelnara called for a recess. The representatives needed time to process what they had learned and consult with their governments. But as they filed out of the chamber, everyone understood that they faced the most important vote in galactic history. Sarah Chen remained in the center of the chamber as the aliens left. For 3 years, she had watched them debate and argue and struggle with problems that human science could solve in minutes. Some of them showed genuine wisdom and compassion. Others seemed trapped in ancient patterns of thinking that would doom their species if left unchecked. In 1 week, humanity would know whether galactic civilization was ready to grow up. The Council's choice would determine not just their own future, but the future of trillions of beings across hundreds of worlds. The quiet human observer had delivered her final message. Now it was time for the galaxy to prove whether it deserved humanity's continued protection, or whether it needed to be saved from itself. Either way, the age of secrets was ending. What came next would depend on whether the Watched had learned anything from their watchers.